A customer who we're not identifying was shopping at the Family Dollar on Stanton Road when he says he saw White holding employees at gunpoint. The customer pulled out his own gun and fired 5 times. While police say it was completely legal, White's family says they're angry.
If his life was not in danger, if no one had a gun up to him, if no one pointed a gun at him, what gives him the right to think that it's okay to just shoot someone? You should have just left the store and left and went wherever you had to go in your car or whatever.
Hey guys, how's it going? This is Brandon with IllinoisGunRights.com bringing you yet another episode of Gun Talk, and today I wanted to talk about the notorious didn't do nothing mindset that is just absolutely sweeping our country like a plague. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with this mindset, it's basically a knee-jerk response when someone gets caught breaking the law. You typically see it from the family of the person breaking the law when they bend over backwards to excuse the actions of a loved one who was so obviously in the wrong. Let's take this man for an example.
We have more details tonight on the man who held up a Rantoul home for nearly 12 hours. 26-year-old Jacob Morrissey died after shooting himself. He had been on the run after an armed home invasion.
Prior to the events that made headlines, Morrissey had several run-ins with the law, including burglary, vehicular hijacking, and stalking. And you can read about all of that in an article I wrote at IllinoisGunRights.com. Shortly after publishing my article, entitled 20,000 Gun Laws Mean Nothing Without Enforcement, this man tracked me down on Facebook. I decided to blur out his name so that I don't have to worry about accusations of my inciting harassment. And I'm not really sure how this man's related to Morrissey, but it's very clear to me that they are close, probably family. And then, he of course, he gives me a piece of his mind. And sadly, this is the type of attitude that we see from coast to coast. It's not his fault. He had a tough life. It's not his fault. The police were picking on him. He didn't do nothing wrong. He was a good boy, not a monster. The media isn't being fair. I mean, how many times have we heard this? Quite frankly, I've lost count. And you may be sitting there right now asking yourself, but Brandon, how does any of this relate to gun rights? Well, the answer is actually very simple. Go ahead and turn on your local TV and switch it over to CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, any of the 24-hour news networks, and I'd be willing to bet my last dollar that within the next 30 minutes, they're going to cover some sort of shooting or armed robbery story. Chances are better than not that this will lead into a conversation about gun control, and you'll have some progressive presidential lapdog who comes on and tells the audience that these shootings over here are why we need to make things more difficult for law-abiding Americans to purchase firearms. They'll use some hyperinflated numbers and tell you that 30,000 lives are taken with guns each year. And some of those guest speakers will even flat out call for a ban on firearms altogether. They'll tell you that, quote unquote, we need background checks and that it's easier to buy a gun than it is to buy a vegetable. But what they won't tell you is that we already have background checks. They won't tell you that there is no such thing as the gun show loophole. What they won't tell you is that the majority of guns used in a crime of any kind, including murder, were obtained via a straw purchase, or were just flat out stolen. And they won't tell you that our government busts tens of thousands of these illegal gun buys every single year, and they prosecute at most a few dozen. And of those prosecuted, a lot of the sentences are laughable at best, as we see here.
Jelita Johnson lied when buying this gun in a Georgia pawn shop. She made what's called a straw purchase, saying the gun was for her when it was really for her boyfriend, Marcus Wheeler. Wheeler would use it to shoot and kill Officer Kerry Orozco in May. Johnson sentenced for lying about that purchase, 1 year probation.
The media won't tell you that the maximum sentence for a straw purchase is actually 10 years in federal prison with a $250,000 fine. And they won't tell you why this judge sentenced this woman to a mere 1 year of probation without a single day spent in jail. The media won't tell you that at least 90% of all gun crime in this country, including murders committed with a firearm, are done so by repeat felons who were already prohibited from owning a firearm. And they especially won't tell you that their favorite number to throw around, 30,000 firearm deaths, includes suicides and justified shootings, like a police officer who justifiably shoots a criminal, or a street thug who gets shot robbing a convenience store. So how does all of this relate to gun culture? Well, the didn't do nothing crowd simply breeds crime through abdication, and they hold in high esteem all of the acts of violence that get wrongfully associated with law-abiding gun owners in the media. And when you combine this intentional deception with a voter base that believes whatever the TV shoves down their throat, you're left with a confused population that has absolutely no idea what's going on, but they believe we must do something about gun crime. And when they're shovel-fed meticulously crafted statistics and they're not shown the real stories behind those statistics, then they begin to agree with the idea that passing a law to prevent Mr. and Mrs. America from owning an AR-15 kind of sounds like a good idea. The didn't do nothing crowd is relative to gun rights because the attitude that it breeds is responsible for well more than the lion's share of all of these gun crime statistics. So the next time something like this happens,
the alleged plan was for 18-year-old Robert Dakar and 24-year-old William Medina to rob the Cricks Corner convenience store. But when the armed twosome left the store, they were confronted by an armed neighbor. Police say a struggle ensued. All three pulled out their weapons, but it was Dakar and Medina who ended up killed after getting shot in the chest.
And those street thugs family go on national TV and respond like this?
It's not fair. It's not fair.
With loved ones by her side, Virginia Medina is mourning her 24-year-old son, William Medina. One of the alleged Cricks Corner robbers shot to death Monday alongside 18-year-old Robert Dakar. Family members say the two were close friends and good men.
My brother was a good kid. He hung out with the wrong crowd. He's not going to get a chance to make up for it.
He's not no thug or no big hard criminal or nothing like that. People painted the picture like, oh, he's a bad person. He is not a bad person. He was never a bad person. He's a good boy. He really was.
Instead of having a bleeding heart for the thugs, try to think about the business owner who had a gun shoved in his face. Try to think about the concealed carrier who was forced to pull his firearm to end 2 human lives in self-defense, and now spends the rest of his days looking over his shoulder wondering if the street thugs' buddies are going to come back in retaliation. If those 2 men were genuinely, quote, good boys, they wouldn't be out robbing hard-working Americans. If this family was not in some way responsible for how these street thugs turned out, then they wouldn't be on TV saying, hey, he didn't do anything. They wouldn't be on TV saying that the concealed carrier should be sued and arrested. And until this mentality that the victim is to blame and the criminal is not responsible for their own actions changes, there is absolutely no hope things are ever going to get better. So there you have it. That's my take. I'd love to hear your response. Please leave a comment down below. Like the video if you liked it. Dislike it if you thought it sucked. Hopefully you'll subscribe. And you'll tune in for the next gun talk.
Them didn't do nothings. Them some good boys. It's not their fault. They're unemployed. Them didn't do nothings. Wouldn't hurt no one. Them didn't do nothings. They just having fun. Them didn't do nothing's coming round. Them didn't do nothing's in your town. Them didn't do nothing's. Them some good boys. It's not their fault. They're unemployed. Them didn't do nothing. Wouldn't hurt no one. Them didn't do nothings, they just having fun. Them didn't do nothing's coming round. Them didn't do nothing's in your town. Them didn't do nothing's gonna start a fire. Them didn't do nothing's getting higher. Them didn't do nothing's in your town. Them didn't do nothing's coming round. Them didn't do nothing's. They wouldn't hurt no one. Them